Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Celtics Chronicle. As usual, I'm your boy, Adam Taylor, joined by my homie, compadre, co-host in crime, Mr. Billy C. What's poppin', Billy?
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, it's Christmas Eve for me. It's technically Christmas Eve for you. It's like, what, 1:25 a.m. out there in sunny Las Vegas?
Yep, it was like a nice 65, 70 degrees today. That's Christmas weather for us.
It's not snowing right now, but it looks like it. Anyway, enough of the weather discussion. The Celtics
Nobody
dropped
wants
another one.
that.
The Celtics dropped another one. They've dropped a couple of games recently. It is what it is. I'm not concerned. They're 1-2 in their last three. If we want to really drill down to the most small sample size possible to make things sound as bad as possible. But that's not what we want to do. No Jayson Tatum. They come up against one of the better defensive teams in the NBA in Orlando, who are missing Paolo Banchero. They're missing Franz Wagner. They're missing Mo Wagner. But they're playing hard, they're playing gritty, and they have so much defensive versatility throughout that roster that even when they're missing some of their top scorers, they can just rely on defense. And we spoke about how Boston need to be able to rely on defense. And when you watch Orlando play, you can see why, right? So what are your high-level takeaways before we start jumping into the granular?
We are a superstar team with Jayson Tatum, but without Jayson Tatum, we're just middle of the road. Like we'd be a 5 or 6 seed. It's such a drop off, and you really notice it with the assists. Our assist numbers tonight were horrible. The turnovers were up, and those things go hand in hand because Jayson Tatum's not only our best scorer, he's not only our best rebounder, he's our best playmaker. And he is the one that gets everybody else these open shots. And those shots were not there to be found today. We only took 32 threes. That's low for us. We made 8. That's even lower. That's the first time in over 50 games we haven't hit at least 10 threes. We miss Jayson a lot. We need him back quickly.
Do you know what shocks me is the amount of drop off in just overall ball movement and off ball movement. You see a lot more ISO, you see a lot more pick and roll, and just to even get separation. And when the ball's not swinging side to side, when it's not getting paint touches and being kicked back out, the entire offense just seems so much more bogged down. And it's crazy how much of an impact Tatum has there just because of the gravity that he brings. So you have to send two to him when he's got the ball, but also because of his processing speed, how quickly he can get that ball out of his hands, how he can constantly find the perfect pass quickly. You'll see a lot where the ball will touch his hands at the top of the perimeter and boom, there's a bullet pass going into the paint or there's a bullet pass going over to a swing in the corner. When he's not there, you are relying more on a Jaylen Brown kind of driving and forcing the issue a little bit. And you heard a lot through this game if you were listening to like Scout and Drew, and they were saying like Brown had to do it all himself. Brown had to do it all himself. And it's not that he had to. It's just that when you're asking Brown to lead an offense, it's very heliocentric versus the collective way that Tatum runs an offense. And it's not worse, it's just different. And when you're different as a championship team with a clear identity, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's not a knock on Brown. It's just the way he plays. And he can't change the way he plays. And there's nothing wrong with the way he plays. We're very successful with that way. The one thing I did want to touch on is, yeah, the paint touches were there. We scored most of our points in the paint and stuff. It's just when Tatum's there, we get those paint touches, the ball comes back out. In this situation, it didn't. And I felt bad for KP because he kept getting kind of dinged around down there and he could not make a shot. He did well getting to the foul line, but he had a horrible shooting game overall. And a lot of that had to do with just the way the spacing was. And man, Orlando's defense, they swarmed him, they swarmed JB, they forced turnovers, and they're really good at closing out at the 3-point line.
One of my closest friends in basketball, Brendan Nunez, covers the Sacramento Kings. And earlier this season, but towards the very beginning, it may have been towards the end of last season, it was some point this year, had a good piece where he'd spoke with Mike Brown about spray offense, which is paint touches into a kick out, and then you flow from there. And it's called a spray because you're spraying the ball out. And since then, that's what I've called driving kick. It's just spray. Because if an NBA head coach is calling it that, that's what I'm calling it. When, as you said, when Tatum's playing, the Celtics rely on a spray offense. It's what you do on that secondary or tertiary possession. Drive, kick, drive, find an open man, swing it, create the mismatch and attack. When Tatum isn't on the floor, there isn't really much spray offense. If you look at that last like minute and a half in the fourth, where you have Horford come off a short roll, get the ball, kick it out to Derek White for that big time corner three to put the lead back down. That was Boston Celtics basketball. And the reason that stood out so much to me personally in that last minute and a bit was because that wasn't there for the rest of the game. It was very much side pick and roll, high pick and roll, drive, rebound, play hard, interior. And for anyone that's saying that teams take too many threes, go and watch this game because you're going to be really happy because there wasn't a lot of success from deep. But again, it's the lack of ball movement when Tatum's not there and the over-reliance on what he brings because he's not always going to be available. And you need to find a way to keep that identity even when he's not on the floor. Otherwise, you get games like this where you drop it to a team that had no business being in this matchup with you in the fourth.
It really shows with obviously Brown could still get his points. KP either by the foul line or just regular. Even Drew was able to create offense, but they're all creating it for themselves. The guys that really suffer are the Pritchards, the Sam Hausers. Those are the guys that need Tatum to draw in that gravity, and then they can get their looks and they can get going. And you saw it was a horrible Pritchard game, and Sam couldn't even take a shot. And I know he's, just coming back. It's his first game back. But that shouldn't happen. I mean, these guys are legit weapons, especially off the bench. Our bench scoring left a lot to be desired tonight.
Two things on this. First of all, I felt like this would have been a good Xavier Tillman game. You needed physicality. You needed an extra presence on the post. Not saying he would have put up numbers, but I think he would have been able to help you just create more separation off screens. If you're going to run pick and roll heavy offense, I think Tillman's the guy you want there because his screen assist numbers are some of the best on the team. Lowest sample size, obviously, but he does help create that separation. And secondly, when we're just looking at this holistically in terms of creating for yourself versus creating for others, there's an issue there in kind of that's been swept under the rug a lot, that if you're running a 5-out offense and you've only got one guy that can create for multiple people, then you need to start figuring out what happens when you need somebody else to create. Now, Derek White does a really good job, but I don't think the ball was in his hands nowhere near enough in terms of a creation standpoint in this game. It was being used more as a catch and drive guy rather than somebody to initiate. And there comes a point where we need to accept that, yes, Jaylen Brown can create for others, but you probably get more out of him by having somebody like White orchestrate and Brown finish and keep him in that play finisher role. Because I do feel like he was put under too much pressure to create off the dribble rather than finish off the dribble. And then the other side of that is Orlando took the 3-point shot away. You got to credit what they did. They really ran you off the line. They closed out. They had high pickup points. They were aggressive. And then you have to start wondering where those screens were coming from and why the Celtics didn't flow into some more of their usual actions.
Yeah, when they do that, it seems like Brown just thinks in his head this is what he's supposed to do. He is very one-dimensional in that aspect where it's like this is what he does. This is what he's going to do. He's thinking score, score, score. But oh man, I mean, you do have teammates. I know Derek White's in a bit of a slump right now, so I do understand why the ball was kind of out of his hands a lot today because he still can't find it. It's been maybe 2 weeks now of this?
Yeah, two and a half, something like that.
Not enough to worry, but just enough to where it's like, every player goes through these during the season. I know it feels like the end of the world. But besides that, man, every time Jaylen put the ball on the floor, it's like the defenders know to go for it. They know he's not going to pass. And they're so good at forcing these turnovers on him. It's like this was the Jaylen Brown that we saw before the playmaking leap. And it just shows how much Tatum really does kind of, delete that from his game.
Going into last season before they won a championship, so last season, that off season leading into it, one of the biggest talking points was Brown's assist to turnover ratio being at almost a 1-to-1. And I feel like because of the way that season went and how the ball moved, we didn't really focus on that too much, but I'm pretty confident it's still close to that 1-to-1 ratio on his career. I don't think there'd be much of a gap. I haven't done the math because obviously this game's not long ended for me. I've just watched it and jumped on here. But when you've got a guy that's a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, asking him to be your lead creator is asking for trouble. Finished this game 4 assists, 5 turnovers. Yes, he had a lot of points. Yes, he rebounded well. He had some really good stretches. But as you said, there was some stretches of play where you were just like, dude, stop driving yourself into trouble. because it felt that way. He'd consistently drive into traffic and have nowhere to go.
And it became a team problem because the rest of the team kind of took on the same aspects. As a team, we had a horrible assist to turnover ratio. But honestly, like I said, any fan that's mad about this game is just looking for something to be mad at. There's no reason to be upset that we lost without Tatum, because this team is built to be around Jayson Tatum. They're not built to be around Jaylen Brown. If Jaylen Brown was the number one option, Brad would have a totally different kind of team around him. He'd have better ball handlers around him. He'd have different kind of bigs around him. But this team is built to play with Jayson Tatum, and that includes Jaylen Brown.
I don't know how you could have said it better, because that is so true. And I think that a lot of people really want to put this, Jalen's better than Jayson, Jason's better than Jaylen. And it's not so much that one's better than the other. They're just very different guys. And Brad made a very clear decision to build around Tatum rather than to build around Jaylen. And you have to roll with that. The only issue that I have in terms of what we saw last night was there was no answer for how to get past this high intensity, high pickup point perimeter defense. And we've seen that multiple times this season. Most of the games the Celtics have dropped or have come close to dropping have all come when a team has picked you up near the logo. They've really got under your hips and got physical with you, not let you get any airspace. And it feels like they've found a way to take away what Porzingis does on the perimeter by getting underneath his hips and not letting him get his feet set, or when he faces up with you, there's no air at all. And he doesn't really have that lower body strength to be able to push you off and create and finish on the fallback. That needs to be a coaching decision on how to adjust when this happens, because now teams have a blueprint on how to take away this 3-point shot, and it's working consistently. And if you're building around Tatum and Tatum's not on the floor, you have to have a secondary option. It's just not there right now.
And I do think that we're still searching for that, because you've noticed just even in the past few weeks when Tatum has played, the rotations are different. We're not doing the traditional Tatum and bench lineups. We're trying to find different bench lineups where it's like we could let this guy, sit for a little bit and not have the game become a disaster. But, I mean, this is a problem that pretty much every team has. I mean, look at Denver when Jokic comes off the floor. So, I mean, come on. So I don't think this is something to panic or worry about. It's something obviously Joe wants to look at, we want to get better at. But let's look big picture here. We're 22-7. We're on a 61 win pace. Anything over 60 is gravy. If that's the 1 seed or the 2 seed, I don't think we're losing sleep either way. Our net rating is actually higher than last year. 10.8 to 10.7. I know it's just, some semantics, but we are still have a higher net rating than we did last year. So those are the two things that I'm looking at, like, oh, this team's worse than last year, blah, blah, blah. Like, guys, come on. We haven't even played our best yet. We've barely had our starting lineup for 7-8 games, and we're right where we're supposed to be.
That's the key point for me. It's not that this year we're not as good as last year. It's that this year they haven't been as healthy as they were last year. Last year, it was a fully healthy roster from jump. Everybody stayed healthy up until this point. It wasn't until after the All-Star break that KP started to miss multiple games. Obviously, you had missing back-to-backs with Horford last season. But in terms of health and where the Celtics were and where the Celtics are now, and there's one loss difference between last season to now, but there's one extra game played, they're pretty much where they were last year, but they haven't been healthy. I'm just about to pull up the numbers now for how many possessions the core starting five have played, because I think that's important. Understanding, contextualizing how many possessions this core five have played. Now, to do this, it's going to take me about 20 seconds. So we've got we've got Kristaps Porzingis. Then you're going to add in Jayson Tatum. Once you've added in Tatum, you're going to add in Brown. Then you're going to add in White. Where's Derek White? And then you're going to add in Drew Holiday. So all season long, they have played a grand total of 187 possessions. Now, when you think 100 possessions is your average over an NBA game, they've played less than 2 full NBA games together, and it hasn't been good. That core starting five are -4 per 100, so they're losing games by 4 points, and that's because they haven't played enough together this season. And when they have, it's been with a KP that's getting himself back into full health, or it's been with a slumping Derek White or a Jayson Tatum that has had so much defensive attention because you can help off of Porzingis early in the season when he's just working his way back up. It's really hard to judge this team when their starting five has played less than 2 full games together. It's just the facts at this point. You do need to give them a few months to really see what they're made of and hope that everyone can stay healthy. Factor in Sam Hauser missing games with back spasms, factor in whoever else you want to factor in for missing games in that rotation. The fact that they're still second in the East and they've only dropped 1 more game than last season, that's a win in my book. That's not a loss.
No, 60-win pace is, like I said, that's the benchmark to me. If you're going to be a great team, it's 60. If you're going to be a good team, it's above 50. I think it's safe to say we're going to win more than 50 games, knock on wood. But as long as you're above 60, you're in that elite. I don't think they're going to lose any sleep if they don't have the 1 seed. Obviously, 1 seed's great. It's nice to have home court throughout. But we've seen, especially with champions that repeat, usually on the second go-around, they don't really focus on the regular season as much as opposed to just being healthy and being ready and playing their best basketball by the time the playoffs roll around. So I don't think they're going to lose any sleep if they're the 2 seed. I honestly kind of think this Cleveland thing is fake. So I do expect some drop-off in the second half of the season. We'll see.
How did you feel about the way Orlando defended in terms of player personnel? Because if you look, Jalen Suggs is excellent defensively. Anthony Black is excellent defensively. Jonathan Isaac. Bitsaze is just a dickhead. He likes to be physical and cause trouble. And we can get onto that in a moment, right? Because you grab someone around the throat, you cannot act shocked when they react. We can get to there in a moment. I just think in terms of the way they match up with teams, there's a lot that you can learn from them because they're long, they're lengthy. They've got a very similar construction to what Boston has just in terms of size and length and physicality, but they just execute it completely differently to how Boston did.
Oh, Suggs is basically Marcus Smart, reincarnated or 2.0. I mean, he puts guards in just jail. Pritchard had wanted no part of what they were doing to him, guarding him today. The bigs, I mean, they're long. They put size on you, and unfortunately, without a superstar to draw some double teams, if they're going to cover us like that, and they did some zone, they did traps, they did so much variety. It really was kind of impressive. Like I said, I didn't think much of this coach before, but he's legit. He definitely needs to be in the coach of the year discussions because to go through this season with all these injuries and still be what are they, the 4 seed right now?
Let me pull it up. I think they're definitely top 5 in the East. Let's have a look. 4th seed, 19 and 12.
That's impressive without your 3 best players, arguably.
And you consistently won. I mean, you had Cole Anthony drop 35 in the game before this one in the second half. I'm a big Cole Anthony guy. I love that microwave mentality. The only time I felt like Boston had their number was when they were running double big, primarily with Porzingis as your weak side roam guy. You saw Porzingis have a couple of blocks where he'd rotate over late and then get the shot as it was in the air with Horford as your 4. That kind of caused some issues for Orlando in terms of their attacking because they were trying to drive and kick and they was running into a bunch of length. But on defense, when they were playing defense against the Celtics, as you said, they were putting guys in binds, they were trapping, they were throwing zone out there. And most importantly, there was no airspace whatsoever. They were right up in your grill from start to finish. And you saw the frustration start to build, which then led to that choppy fourth quarter where everybody was getting in each other's face. And then it ends up with that double tech between KP and it was KP and Suggs with Bitsaze putting his hands around his throat, getting ejected. I just want to touch on that for a moment. I'm fine with things boiling over. If you're playing a physical team, eventually that's going to piss you off because you're getting bust up, you're getting bruised. You might have a back-to-back. I mean, it's Christmas. These guys don't want to be playing with cuts and bruises all over while they're trying to play with their kids. But on the other side, don't put your hands around someone's throat and think it's going to be okay because it's not. You can't then act shocked when Porzingis reacts.
That was wild. I don't understand how that was just an ejection for Goga. That could have really escalated badly. And because KP, I don't know why people think he's soft. Like, he's been in fights before on the court and off the court. He has some backbone. So that could have really got ugly, and we could have been missing KP for 10 to 15 games if actually Suggs came in the middle to kind of break it up for a second. Probably saved KP a fine and a suspension because I think he would have swung at him.
Yeah, it feels like Goga just wants to be the new Draymond Green, just wants to get him fight. And every time he plays Boston, this is how it goes, right? There's a history of contentiousness between Goga Bitadze and Boston. Doesn't matter what team he's on, he just finds a way to insert himself into some drama.
And good for him. I honestly didn't think he was going to be much of an NBA player. He's a rotation player and a starter, depending on the team you have. He's not bad.
What did you think of Queen on a two-way? I thought he played really well, played hard, played fast, made decent decisions for the most part.
I don't think that's sustainable, but I was impressed. I mean, it was awesome for a two-way guy, but I think that was a little bit of just a little fake magic, no pun intended.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm fine with that. If that's how it works, that's how it works. But that dude got to live out that dream of being like a catalyst against the NBA champions for a day. No matter what happens the rest of his career, you can't take that game away from him now.
Well, and you saw how they celebrated at the end of the game. I mean, it was like they won the championship, which, you know what? They earned it. Like I said, you beat the champs, whether we have our superstar or not. I'm fine with a young team like that using that as something they could build on and remember.
So as we said at the start, there's no Christmas Eve games, just so everybody knows. No games today, Tuesday. There will be games tomorrow, Christmas Day. Celtics play at 5 p.m. Eastern. That's 10 p.m. for me. I'll probably be watching live. Hopefully. Depends how the day goes. Might be too drunk by that point. We'll find out. Celtics vs Sixers. Sixers have not been great all season, but they're starting to figure things out a little bit now. Obviously, health is still an issue for them. Embiid's missed a bunch. PG's missed a bunch. Tyrese Maxey looks legit. But it's a rivalry game, and anything can happen in a rivalry game. As I said, Celtics have lost 2 of their last 3, coming in against Philly. How are you feeling for this game? Are you amped up? Are you nervous?
I hate Philly. Like, Philly and Miami are the 2 teams like we just can't ever lose to because it's something about Nick Nurse. He just annoys the heck out of me. Like, he's doing his antics, standing on the court. Like, every time he throws his little baby tantrums, like, I want to throw something at the TV. And he has the perfect players for that too, because Embiid does the same thing. He just physically does the tantrums on the court. But they're playing better. They got everybody back. I was actually kind of sad that the rookie got hurt because that kid's awesome, McCain. If we lose this game though, especially on that stage, it's gonna be a rough night.
I'm not hoping to see another loss. The Celtics have only, what is it now? About 12 months, if not 18 months now, where they've not lost more than 2 in a row. But they have lost back-to-backs, and in terms of lose one, lose another, and then bounce back in the third game. With that being said, I really don't want this to be a back-to-back loss. It's too much pressure. A lot depends on how quickly Tatum gets better. He's out with an illness. It's not an injury. But we know what these flu symptoms can be like, man. You could be on your ass for a week. You know what I mean? You can't ask him to play. I'd much rather him not play when sick because he's not going to play well. And if he doesn't play well, then everyone's going to get on his back about it. So, unless you can really contribute, sit your ass down and stay at home. And that's no disrespect, but I'd be really interested to see how Jaylen Brown can lead a team against someone like Philly, especially when they're healthy, and what adjustments Mazzulla makes to the whole offensive approach based on what we learned against Orlando, assuming Tatum's out.
Well, the bright side is Philly doesn't play defense like Orlando. I like Nick Nurse is a great coach, but I think of him more of as an offensive coach than a defensive coach. Maybe that's unfair, but I just don't think he's going to be doing those kind of. He's going to do some rat defense. Don't get me wrong. He's going to do some shenanigans like he does like his rat defenses, but I don't think that he has the personnel that are willing to get down and dirty like the Magic do. Like, I don't see Paul George defending at a high level at this stage of his career. Embiid, if he could even stay on the court, he's worried about offense, not defense. Maxey, I think we could attack Maxey. I don't know if he's going to be our target, if we're going to, killer whale offense against him, or if it will be Oubre or whoever it may be in that starting lineup. But I guarantee you one of those 5 is going to be a weak link, and we're going to get those switches on them, and we're going to attack.
I think when you look at the best years of Nurse's coaching in Toronto, he had Nate Bjorken doing his defensive strategies. The box and one was from Nate. A lot of what Toronto ran that was successful defensively came from Nate. Obviously, he went on then to have an absolute nightmare tenure with the Pacers before that got ended quicker than it almost started. But in terms of what he brought defensively, I'm pretty sure he's not on Philly's staff as a defensive-minded coach. I might be wrong, but overall, I think if Nurse has always needed that defensive-minded assistant to help him, and he doesn't really have that in Philly right now. And that, to me, will be a big part of how Mazzulla can kind of attack that. Because I do think that Mazzulla's offense is more modernized than what Nick Nurse's is, and he's got the player personnel to fit what he wants better than what Nurse has got. Nurse has got what Morey thinks he's going to win, whereas Mazzulla's got what Mazzulla needed, because Brad just seems to be less egotistical than Morey.
That's
I'm just firing shots. Morey follows me on social media. I need to be nice. Sorry.
We like Dork Elvis, okay? Morey is
Dork Elvis. That rings true, man. You're in Vegas. You see a lot of Elvises.
Yep, and Morey could fit right in, man. We could put him in a white jumpsuit with some flames on it. He'd fit right in.
I'm actually looking at his Nate Bjorken on a staff right
now. He might have went back to Europe, huh?
Now he's with the Blazers. So yeah, that's how that went.
Yeah.
Go from being an assistant coach on a championship team to one of the shortest tenured head coaches in recent history to an assistant coach on one of the worst teams in the league. I see that's a career trajectory right there.
Yeah, that's not too fun.
It's funny though. I mean, he's still in the NBA and we're not, so I don't know who's really got the last laugh there. In terms of matchups, assuming if Tatum plays, I'll be interested to see how Paul George gets up for this game. Tatum usually performs really well against PG. He usually has really good games. If Tatum's not on the floor, I am interested to see how Jaylen Brown deals with going up against such a high level. Like you said, he's not an elite wing defender anymore, but he's still a high level defender when he wants to be. And I would be interested in seeing that matchup of Brown versus George just for, 50, 60 possessions, just to see how it works out, maybe 30 possessions. Because I'd like to see Brown have to go through some of that attention against an elite wing and how he kind of counters that on-ball pressure.
And I don't think there would be any help or traps. It just doesn't seem like Nurse's style, especially with that personnel. Because I don't see Maxey being like a helper trying to trap Jaylen Brown when he dribbles. I don't think Oubre or any of those other guys. Their roster's so weird. I don't understand how that team's put together. I do like Yabusele. We'll see our friend the Dancing Bear. I could totally see him having a game against us.
I don't want him to, but I can see that. Yabu's done well. Like, he's actually been one of the bright spots of their season. Low cost, decent return in terms of production on the floor. Rebounds well, scores well. Just a much better player than the one that left the NBA. He's really, really developed during his time with Real Madrid.
Danny Ainge isn't wrong often. It might take a while, but everybody usually comes around. Like, Yabu's an NBA player.
It's going to take a while for Utah to turn around. But yeah, I mean, he knows his ball, man. Like, Danny Ainge has been successful at every level of basketball. So that Danny can't draft narrative was generally overblown in the first place. He drafted most of the core that ended up being able to create this super team right now.
Yeah, the Danny can't draft thing is hilarious because you could put him up against anyone, and I'll even throw Presti in there, and you're going to be able to be like, well, yeah, I could see why Danny gets the edge.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to end it here, and I just want a prediction. Celtics, what? Philly, what? What's your scoreline?
I don't see a lot of defense being played, even on our end. I'll go 120 to 108. Celtics win.
I'm going to go Celtics 130 to 118, and I'm going to expect it to go to overtime.
God, to just make Christmas miserable for all of us. We're going to have a sweat.
With that, everybody, we've kept it nice and short, 30 minutes, because it's Christmas Eve. You're probably just doing some last-minute shopping, some gift wrapping, or you're at the gym. So we're wanting to make sure that we can keep it to fit within your day. Me and Billy will be back later this week. Again, we're starting to get a bit of a rhythm now. Show us some love. Got to get a bit more personality from me involved, but, I've been up since early, and I need to be brighter. That's on me. Everybody, have a good one. Merry Christmas, y'all.
Merry Christmas.